Technos Japan released Double Dragon in the arcades in 1987, they essentially created the co-op beat-em-up subgenre. Although the game is practically dead now, it used to be a staple in every arcade and was one of the greatest franchises of its time. 2 street tough brothers, an army of thugs, and a kidnapped girlfriend. A blueprint that has been recreated and iterated upon many times. And that's exactly what we're exploring in this list. So here are 15 insane Double Dragon 2D clone games you need to play right now. Renegade, 1986. Renegade is basically the spiritual prequel to Double Dragon. Released in 1986 by Technos Japan, this arcade brawler is widely considered the true but lesser-known grandfather of the modern beat-em-up genre. There were previous games such as Kung Fu Master, which featured single-playing, low TTK combat, but Renegade invented a couple of new features that are still standard to this genre, namely multi-directional movement in a belt-scrolling arena, enemies that require multiple hits to defeat, and a complex grappling system. You could throw thugs over your shoulder, knee them in the gut, or even straddle fallen enemies to pummel them into the pavement. While the controls, which feature separate buttons for left-facing and right-facing attacks, were way less refined and more stiff than those of Double Dragon. The game has a split identity depending on where you played it. In Japan, it was a semi-autobiographical high school revenge story inspired by creator Yoshihisa Kishimoto's own teenage brawls and his love for Bruce Lee films. When it was localized for the West as Renegade, Taito gave it a massive graphical overhaul and had it stylized after the 1979 movie, The Warriors. Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja, 1988. The tagline of the game sums up its attitude well. The president has been kidnapped by ninjas. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue Ronnie? Released by Data East in 1988, Bad Dudes vs. Dragon Ninja is a more of a comedic parody game that uses every action movie cliche of its era. You play as Blade or Striker, 2 street-smart brawlers in muscle shirts and track pants, tasked with single-handedly punching their way through an endless army of ninja assassins to save a thinly veiled Ronald Reagan. This brawler restricts you to a strictly 2D plane, but you can jump between upper and lower levels. Most basic ninjas fall to a single strike, allowing you to plow through hordes of enemies at an unstoppable pace. By holding down the attack button, you can charge up an inner energy punch. The stages keep the action varied and interesting, especially fighting on top of an 18-wheeler zooming down the highway, or fighting on a moving train, and as we all know, the best fights are fights on a moving train. Crime Fighters, 1989. Before Konami released their super popular licensed beat-em-ups such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and X-Men, they first tested the waters with their own IP, Crime Fighters. Released in 1989, this game was Konami's version of Double Dragon, wanting to double them by creating a 4-player co-op game. You and up to 3 friends play as a group of color-coded undercover cops tasked with rescuing a group of kidnapped women from a ruthless crime syndicate. The game leans heavily into that late 80s action movie sleaze, featuring bosses that range from Freddy Krueger lookalikes to leather-clad giant gangbangers. The gameplay is notoriously difficult and brutal, even with 4 players cooperating. With combat that has a simple punch, kick, and jump system, but you're allowed to repeatedly kick enemies while they're down or stomp them on the groin. Weapons like lead pipes, knives, and even handguns are scattered throughout the stages, making crowd control slightly easier. But be wary though, as players can accidentally or intentionally punch each other, which can either lead to hilarity or real-life fights between y'all. The Combat Tribes, 1990. Following the massive success of Double Dragon, Technos Japan returned to the arcades in 1990 with the Combat Tribes. Acting as a spiritual successor to Renegade and Double Dragon, you play as one of 3 massive cyborg vigilantes, Berserker, Belova, or Blitz, who are tasked with cleaning up the gang-infested streets of a futuristic New York City. This game ditches the side-scrolling feature of Double Dragon in exchange for enclosed fighting arenas where you must fight through waves of differently themed gangs and finally fight their bosses. What makes this game special compared to the previous games is that although you have the standard punches and kicks, the game focuses heavily on grappling and environmental attacks. You can swing enemies by their ankles, stomp on them when they're down, smash two thugs' heads together, or even pick up massive objects like parked motorcycles and pinball machines to hurl into crowds. With up to 3 players combined with the confined arenas, it does lead to a lot of on-screen chaos. Riot City, 1991, developed by Westone, best known for the Wonder Boy series, and published by Sega. In Riot City, you play as Paul or Bobby, 2 narcotics detectives punching their way through the crime-ridden slums of Dixon City to rescue Paul's kidnapped girlfriend from a syndicate known as MID. It leans heavily on the belt-scrolling blueprint laid down by Double Dragon and borrows heavily from other established tropes. The gameplay is exactly what you would expect from the golden age of brawlers, with large, detailed character sprites and familiar combat mechanics. You have the standard punch and kick combos, flying jump kicks, satisfying close quarters grappling, and the classic health-draining desperation spin move to clear surrounding crowds. Strangely enough, though, Riot City doesn't have any equipable weapons like pipes or knives that are common in the genre. A strange move, to be sure. While it doesn't reinvent the wheel, it has tight controls, great artwork and animations, and superb pacing that makes this one of the most polished beat-em-ups out there. Burning Fight, 1991. Released in 1991 as SNK's answer to the newly growing beat-em-up genre, you can see how it borrows directly from Double Dragon and Final Fight. You take control of 2 tough-as-nails New York detectives, Duke and Billy, who team up with a local Japanese cop named Ryu to dismantle a powerful Yakuza syndicate. You fight through a fictionalized Osaka, which you can see with its parody of the famous Dotonbori district and its iconic Running Man sign. The core gameplay has the typical action of rapid-fire punches, jump kicks, and swinging discarded weapons like lead pipes and glass bottles, but the game spices things up through its impressive environmental interactivity. As you brawl your way down the street, you can physically smash through storefront windows and step inside various shops to find hidden healing items, uncover stashed boxes of weapons, or fight hidden mini-bosses in enclosed spaces. The pixel art has that gorgeous SNK quality, and its environmental interactions make it more lively, and not like the environments are just interchangeable backdrops. Vendetta, 1991. Released in 1991 as the direct sequel to Crime Fighters, Konami's Vendetta refined the game into a smoother but more chaotic experience. The plot is simple. A ruthless syndicate known as the Dead End Gang expands its territory into your city and kidnaps Kate, a young woman under the protection of the heroic Cobras gang. Players select from 4 distinct members of the Cobras: Blood, Hawk, Boomer, and Sledge. This sequel has larger character sprites, more varied enemy designs, and a darker urban art style. The combat mechanics in Vendetta stand out by offering a wide array of situational attacks. Players can execute ground strikes to finish off fallen enemies, perform running clotheslines, and even team up for coordinated double-team maneuvers when playing with friends on the 4-player cabinet. Alongside the standard assortment of knives, baseball bats, and steel chains, players can wield heavy cinder blocks, toss Molotov cocktails, and even fire pump-action shotguns. Then there are the environmental interactions. Thugs can be knocked into open bodies of water, flattened by falling shipping crates, or hit by moving vehicles. It's super chaotic and interactive. DD Crew, 1991. Sega released DD Crew to compete with Vendetta. Players choose from 4 distinct fighters to stop a terrorist syndicate from executing a bombing plot. You play as either Blood, a former professional boxer, Buster, a martial arts expert, King, a hulking powerhouse, or Gung-Ho, a balanced fighter. Gameplay-wise, it offers a straightforward combination of punches, jump kicks, and desperation moves. Players can also grab enemies for close-range throws, or, utilize scattered weapons like combat knives and explosive grenades to clear out tougher enemy groups. You'll notice the game is considerably slower and more deliberate than other games, requiring careful positioning and crowd control, and disincentivizing button mashing and panic. This spacing, combined with a high arcade difficulty designed to consume quarters, makes cooperative gameplay on the original 4-player cabinet the only real way to experience this game. Undercover Cops, 1992. Developed by IRM in 1992, Undercover Cops, you'll be surprised to learn that this game isn't actually about undercover cops. Set in the year 2043, players take control of one of three vigilantes: former karate master Zan Takahara, ex-pro football player Matt Gables, or vigilante Rosa Belmont, hired by the city mayor to dismantle a criminal syndicate led by a mad scientist set in a post-apocalyptic city. Unlike the clean urban streets of its contemporaries, the game features ruined cityscapes, mutant enemies, and industrial wastelands. You'll probably even recognize this rusty gunmetal collar palette from their iconic Metal Slug series. And just like Metal Slug, the character animations are fluid and full of personality. The gameplay features the standard punching and kicking, but the standout mechanic is the ability to uproot concrete pillars, swing steel girders, and hurl entire motorcycles or cars at crowds of enemies to inflict maximum damage. The game also features a strange health recovery system where players consume bizarre apocalyptic food items like live frogs, snails, and mice to restore their stamina. Rival Turf, 1992. Released by Jaleco in 1992 for the SNES, Rival Turf is a localized version of the Japanese brawler Rushing Beat. The plot follows Jack Flack, a street brawler, and police officer Uzi Nelson as they fight through a city overrun by a gang known as the Street Kings to rescue Jack's kidnapped girlfriend. You brawled across familiar urban environments, from city streets to moving buses to stadiums, facing waves of color-coded enemies and bosses, providing a solid co-op experience, capitalizing on the fact that Final Fight for the SNES was strictly single-player. The combat is a straightforward mix of combos, jump kicks, and grapple moves, but featuring an angry mode where a character takes enough damage to become temporarily invincible, dealing heavy hits with faster attacks and specialized throws. The game also includes a 2-player versus mode, allowing friends to fight each other directly. The game is super unpolished though, with janky hit detection and its terribly funny English translation, but that quirkiness makes the game unique. Brawl Brothers, 1992. Brawl Brothers, released in 1992, is a sequel to Rival Turf, or should I say, the second part of Jaleco's Rushing Beat series. The storyline now focuses on a martial arts instructor named Hack and his cyber partner Slash, who must rescue their fellow gym members from a sinister cloning syndicate operating out of Bayside City. Unlike its predecessor, this game has a diverse cast of 5 playable characters right from the start, including a professional wrestler, a ninja, and a skilled acrobat. Jaleco utilized the feedback from their previous title to significantly upgrade the visual presentation, with larger character sprites, smoother animations, and more detailed environment. Each of the 5 fighters has a distinct set of martial arts moves, grapple attacks, and aerial strikes, with the combat feeling way heavier and more impactful this time, while still including that angry mode from before. The stages here occasionally feature maze-like layout, forcing them to find the correct path through confusing sewer networks or building corridors rather than simply walking to the right. The Peacekeepers, 1993. Released by Jaleco in 1993 for the SNES, it's the final game in the Rushing Beat Brawler trilogy. The North American localization made substantial changes to the original Japanese release, shifting the narrative from a grounded martial arts revenge story to a futuristic 2015 dystopia controlled by a sinister mega corporation known as DM Corp. Players select from a cast of 4 initial fighters, including the balanced brawler Flynn, the swift martial artist Echo, the hulking mutant Pro Cop, and the returning veteran Norton. with 2 additional secret characters available to unlock. The muted color palette works well with this dystopian setting, with genetically modified enemies and ruined urban environments. This time, they implemented a dedicated block button that allows players to perform counterattacks, letting players hurl enemies directly towards the screen using the SNES's Mode 7 scaling technology. The game also features a branching path system at the end of stages, leading to different levels, boss encounters, and multiple story endings. The game also includes a dedicated versus mode that accommodates up to 4 players simultaneously using the Super Multi-Tap peripheral. Beer Rap Boys, 1992. Developed by Kaneko in 1992, Beer Rap Boys is a unique, groovy, and very vibey game. I gotta mention, the hip-hop soundtrack of this song, as with how hard this game is, the music really does soothe that frustration. As you can see, the game fully embraces a wild, exaggerated hip-hop and urban youth culture aesthetic, featuring actually accurate 90s streetwear, graffiti, street culture, and even combat on skateboards, skates, and BMX bikes. The narrative follows a trio of street-smart kids who must brawl their way through rival gangs, corrupt construction workers, and eccentric bosses to reclaim their stolen boombox and rescue a kidnapped friend. Combat is tough, and enemies tend to hit immediately as soon as you get in range, so you really need to pay attention to spacing and the timing of your attacks. You'll also notice that on top of picking up pipes and bats, you also pick up a BMX bike that you use in combat, which I always found to be really funny, fighting people while riding on a bike. Night Slashers, 1993. Released by Data East in 1993, Night Slashers sets itself apart from the competition by switching to a full-blown classic horror aesthetic. Players choose one of the 3 monster hunters: Jake, a cybernetic brawler with metallic arms, Christopher, a European vampire hunter, and Hongwon, a martial arts expert. Their mission is to fight through stages packed with the undead, mutants, and classic cinematic monsters to stop the evil king Zeruts from conquering the world. The game is famous for its visceral gore, particularly in the Japanese release where enemies explode in showers of red blood and melting flesh, a feature that was censored with green blood or removed entirely in overseas cabinets. Combat is your basic strikes, jump kicks, and close quarters grapples, supplemented by chargeable forward dashing attacks. The game also incorporates a dedicated magic system where characters cast screen-clearing elemental spells to obliterate surrounding hordes. The system also encourages aggressive tactics, allowing players to stomp on grounded monsters to ensure they do not get back up. With its distinct horror movie designs and powerful attacks, it's one of the most unique games in this genre. Shadow Force, 1993. Released in 1993, Technos Japan returns with Shadow Force, dropping you into a grim, futuristic setting where a cyborg dictator named Dr. Wong is attempting to conquer the world using an army of genetically modified mutants and elite martial artists. You play as either Kai, a balanced martial artist, Tengu, a hulking masked wrestler, Coyote, a feral beastman, or Blunted, a swift sword-wielding warrior. The game features a distinctly darker and more aggressive art style than their previous titles, leaning heavily into a sci-fi cyberpunk aesthetic with very clean art. The gameplay has a complex fighting game-inspired system. The arcade cabinet utilizes a 6-button layout with dedicated buttons for light, medium, and heavy attacks, as well as guarding. Players can execute elaborate command inputs to do special moves, juggle enemies in the air, and perform situational throws. However, the most defining mechanic is the ability to possess almost any enemy. By inputting a specific command, your character physically enters the body of a street thug, ninja, or robot, granting you full access to their unique movesets, weapons, and hit points. This possession system effectively turns the game's entire roster of enemies into playable characters. The legacy of Double Dragon lives on in these arcade brawlers, each bringing distinct mechanics to the classic team-up with your buddy to rescue your girl formula. Whether you want to battle mutants, vampires, or street gangs, there is always a new, fun co-op experience waiting for you and your friends.